Think about the words you use every day. Okay, hello, spam. 3 tiny words that seem almost invisible because we've used them a million times. But here's the twist most people never hear. Every one of those words, some of the most recognizable on the planet, started as a joke, a mistake, or an accident nobody took seriously. To understand the first word, we need to step into 1830s Boston. Picture a city full of newspapers competing the way social media platforms do today. Loud, messy, and desperate for attention. Editors weren't formal intellectuals, they were the original shit posters. Inside jokes, ironic spellings, ridiculous abbreviations, it was all part of the trend at the time known as anti-intellectual intellectualism. Basically, the cool thing was to misspell words on purpose because nothing says I'm cultured like spelling all correct as all correct. And in the middle of this sarcastic chaos, something tiny and now universally known was born. On March 23, 1839, Charles Gordon Green, the editor of the Morning Boston Post, wrote a humorous piece about a fictional club poking fun at people who rang bells too loudly. In that article, he casually used the abbreviation OK as a joke spelling of all correct. There was no plan, no intention, no big moment, just an editor making himself laugh. It should have died there. But history has a habit of holding on to the wrong things. Just 1 year later, the U.S. is in the middle of the 1840 presidential election. Martin Van Buren is running, and his supporters form OK clubs. Not because of all correct, but because Van Buren was from Kinderhook, New York. His nickname was Old Kinderhook. And suddenly, OK jumped from a small Boston joke to a national slogan. It's printed on banners, badges, and newspapers across the country. It's the 1840s version of a meme exploding out of nowhere. And as with any meme, the people who hate it accidentally make it stronger. Van Buren's opponents tried to smear the word by spreading fake meanings like out of cash, out of credit, out of clothes. It's basically early American political trolling, and of course, the more they tried to kill the word, the more the public used it. Some things never change. But the reason OK truly survived had nothing to do with politics, it was technology. When the telegraph arrived, long-distance communication needed short, unmistakable signals. Something that was fast to tap out in Morse code, impossible to confuse, and easy to understand even with static. OK was perfect. It became the go-to confirmation for telegraph operators. By the late 1800s, American railroads used it to confirm safety, shipping companies used it in logs, immigrants found it the easiest English word to learn, and when World War II sent American soldiers across Europe and the Pacific, OK spread with them. By the time the war ended, OK wasn't just an American word, it was a global military shorthand, business shorthand, and eventually the most recognized word on Earth. Not bad for a typo, and that brings us to our second accidental word, when we say every time we answer the phone. But before we get to the moment it became the world's greeting, we need to step back to the beginning of telephones themselves. In 1876, Alexander Bell invented the telephone, a revolutionary device, but he forgot one tiny thing. What do you actually say when you pick up the phone? Bell, being Bell, had his favorite greeting of ahoy. Yes, the same words sailors used across ships. Bell genuinely believed America would answer every phone call like they were boarding a pirate vessel. And incredibly, early telephone manuals actually told people to answer with ahoy hoy. But while Bell was daydreaming about nautical readings, Thomas Edison was focused on something more practical: sound quality. Early telephone lines were awful, buzzing, crackling, faint. Edison started testing readings that could punch through the noise. He tried long shouts, clipped phrases, even what is wanted. Nothing worked well enough. And then he remembered a word used for centuries to get someone's attention: hello. It wasn't a greeting at the time. It meant something like hey or stop right there. But it had everything the early telephone system needed: a sharp H, a long LO, and zero confusion with other words. Then Edison pulled a genius move. He wrote the first official telephone etiquette guide. And in that guide, he made hello the recommended greeting. Bell hated it. Some companies used ahoy, others used hello. For a few years, America had a full-blown greeting war. Half the country yelling hello into their new phones, and the other half yelling ahoy like they were calling for lifeboats. But practicality always wins. By the 1880s, hello became standard. Newspapers started explaining the proper way to answer a telephone. Etiquette books taught people how loudly to say it. Switchboard operators, mostly young women, became known as hello girls. And that brings us to our last word, the most annoying one. The one sitting in your inbox right now from some guy trying to sell crypto courses. Spam. In 1937, Hormel Foods launched Spam, short for spiced ham. It was cheap, salty, and incredibly shelf-stable, which made it the perfect product for the American diet at the time. But then the world entered World War II. The US military brought more than 150 million pounds of Spam. Soldiers ate it so often that Spam became a running joke, an endless, repetitive, unavoidable presence. They even came up with fake acronyms like something posing as meat. But the moment Spam truly changed culture came decades later. December 15th, 1970. Monty Python aired a sketch set in a diner where nearly every dish contained Spam. As the customers talk, the group of Vikings suddenly starts chanting Spam, 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 louder and louder, drowning out the conversation. It was ridiculous, chaotic, and unforgettable. When the early internet arrived in the 1990s, users brought pop culture with them. In early text-based online games, MUDs, players would flood chat by typing spam, 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 referencing the Monty Python sketch. It meant overwhelming the conversation with meaningless noise. So when the first big commercial email blast hit thousands of inboxes in 1994, people instantly knew what to call it. They called it spam, and the name stuck. Today, we barely think about these words. We type okay without realizing it's a 180-year-old inside joke. We say hello without knowing Bell once tried to replace it with ahoy. We call junk email spam because a British comedy group made Viking shout about canned meat. None of these words came from dictionary scholars or linguistic experts. They came from jokes, miscommunication, and weird historical coincidences. And if that's true, imagine what words we're creating right now. Maybe on TikTok, maybe in memes that our grandchildren will someday consider completely normal. See you